All right, just some brief discussion about stimulus money and inflation. So, if you've been paying attention the last couple of years, you will have noticed that the government has taken loans and paid it out to people in the form of what they call stimulus money. Basically, the idea is that they will borrow a bunch of money and then take that money and send it out as checks to people, different increments. I think there have been three rounds since coronavirus began, three rounds of stimulus checks. And they range from $600 to $1,100, somewhere in that range. I don't recall exactly. But that's the idea of stimulus money. And the theory being that if you push that cash into the economy, um, most people are likely to spend it right away, which is true, and they're likely to buy something that they either need or that they want. And so it goes very quickly. And so the idea that that spending bubble would help sales and it would sort of ripple throughout the economy and maybe get things going again, it's completely nonsensical. There's literally no reasonable basis that I'm aware of to suppose that that would do anything other than harm. Um, so we'll leave stimulus there. Inflation occurs when you borrow and print too much money. So try to imagine, this is an imperfect analogy, but a Monopoly game has $20,580 in it, exactly. And so suppose one evening you're playing with three of your friends, and it's just an insane set of circumstances and coincidence, but you've essentially played this to a stalemate. No one's going broke. Everybody's just getting the exact roll they need of the dice. So pretty soon everyone is wealthy. No one is sending out more money than they're taking in. But what happens? The bank runs out of money. So game over. But you say, hey, I've got another Monopoly game. It's up in the closet upstairs. What if I just go get the bank out of that one? I can bring it down here, and then we'll just use that and we can just continue playing. Well, you can do that, but because you've doubled the money supply, in other words, you have a full bank, plus there's a full bank that is out amongst the four players, that means that you necessarily doubled the cost of all the property. So Boardwalk is no longer $400, it cost $800. Park Place is no longer $350, it's now $700, assuming those values were correct. It's been a while since I've played. But you get the idea. Inflating the money supply has that effect that it's going to just simply increase the cost of things. You can't print money out of thin air and then expect that prices would stay the same. Prices and value will always necessarily be a direct reflection of the amount of currency in a system and the value of that currency within the system. So anytime we manipulate the amount of that currency or the value of it, we also manipulate prices. Now, why was it such a terrible idea to have stimulus money pumped into the economy, especially during this time of pandemic and coronavirus? Here's a brief explanation as to why. So imagine taking $1 trillion and you borrow that, you just print it up on pallets and send it to all the banks, and then there you go. The stimulus is out. It ends up appearing in people's bank accounts in the form of either $600 or $1,100, somewhere in there. Again, I'm not certain, but this occurs, and so basically you've dumped a ton of cash into the economy, $1 trillion. So what you've done is you've changed the amount of dollars that's now going to be required to purchase the same item. So everything becomes slightly more expensive when it adjusts. So you've really done nothing except for inflate the dollar, which in turn inflates the cost, which is the same net difference that you started with. The net difference doesn't change there. So here's why it's especially bad. Because as we talked about earlier, the overwhelming majority of people will spend this right away. Most people are working class or working poor, and they're going to buy things that they either need or want right away. So if you imagine that number to be 75 or 80%, within a couple weeks, people have purchased what they need or wanted with 75 to 80% of this stimulus money. Well, where has it gone? Well, you've closed all the small businesses. All the mom and pop shops are the sidewalks are rolled up. Nobody even wants to go outside. You're having your food delivered from these pop-up companies, the Uber Eats and etc. And so when everybody's closed, who's still open? Amazon, of course. They have everything. And so most of that stimulus money ended up being spent on Amazon because people could get everything they needed or wanted from Amazon. So a huge amount of that stimulus money immediately went up to the coffers of Amazon and into the accounts of the richest man in the world. So essentially a taxpayer subsidy found its way into the pockets of Jeff Bezos within a matter of weeks. I mean, I've never even heard of such a stupid windfall. The fact that no one's taken responsibility for it. 24 months ago is when coronavirus began, when it first hit the shore of the United States, February of 2020. It may have been March, but somewhere at the end of February, March. So it's been approximately 24 months, almost to the day. So 24 months ago, Jeff Bezos' net worth was $113 billion. 24 months later, today, his net worth is $178 billion. Not quite double, but that's a huge gain considering most businesses were crushed in the pandemic. So if most businesses were crushed and the economic stimulus money didn't stimulate anything, where did it go and who has it? Jeff Bezos has it. Now, there's one more element to this that makes it even worse. Guess where most of the products that are sold on Amazon are now manufactured? In the People's Republic of China. So you essentially have a taxpayer subsidy that is designed to look like relief for struggling citizens that ends up benefiting the richest man in the world, and the bulk of which ultimately ends up in the pockets of our enemies. So there's not a lot left there that could have gone horribly wrong. That's a pretty thorough way to make a colossal mistake and a disaster. So, I'm trying to keep a sense of humor about it. We'll see what happens. But right now we're experiencing about 7% inflation, which means that it's 7% more expensive to live than it was last year. I didn't get a 7% raise, by the way. I did notice, though, that I got an email from Amazon last week that said my Prime membership is increasing in cost from $130 to $150, something like that. And I thought that was odd because the last time I checked, Jeff Bezos got himself a nice big fat raise and the taxpayers paid for it, and our grandkids will be paying that off with interest, and not to mention everyone else that it benefited along the way. So try to keep a sense of humor about it. You'll drive yourself crazy if you don't. And I hope that these analogies made sense to you. I realize that they're imperfect, but the important thing is that you got the gist of it. You increase the amount of dollars. All you do is drive up the amount of dollars it's going to require to purchase the same item. Anyway, I'm going to end it here. So I hope you enjoyed it. And hopefully inflation will come back down. But I don't see it in our future, immediate future anyway. So hang in there.